Oh my gosh, we got a doozy for you guys today. Today, we're going to talk about the dark side of discipline with Craig Ballantyne, and he is a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and he's got a pretty incredible outlook on life, and he shares some really important keys that I think can absolutely make a difference for you. If you've been doing so much but struggling to find success, this is the episode for you. Be sure to stay tuned, like, and subscribe, and most importantly, enjoy the episode. Wherever you are and however you're listening, thank you so much for being back with us on another episode of Winning the Moment. Today I'm pumped because we're going to learn about the dark side of discipline. And, I've got a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and that is not an easy thing to do. His name is Craig Ballantyne, and I can't wait to jump in today. I'm going to learn alongside you guys, so it's going to be really fun. Craig, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited.
So, Craig, you are the author of 4 books. The oldest one was, what was it called? The Perfect Formula? The Perfect Day. Let's start there because that's your first book. And first question is, what made you want to write a book in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So, I've always wanted to write books because I was a bookworm when I was a kid. But this one, the Perfect Day Formula, came out of people just asking me, how do you get so much done? Because years ago, I owned multiple businesses. I wrote all these email newsletters, and people were like, man, you just really getting a lot of content out there. And so I just got these questions all the time. And I started a little bit of business coaching as a side hustle. And I owned a business called Early to Rise, still own this business called Early to Rise. It's a website about, getting more done and building your wealth and that sort of stuff. And I just love talking about it. I just love breaking people's days down and figuring out how can we squeeze more juice from it. So I ended up writing a lot of essays and trying to put it together in a book. And I was, as a naive first-time author, I did a poor job. Went and got some professional help on it, and then finally cranked it out.
And when you say kid, when did you find your infatuation with books?
Man, I got a Stephen King book when I was 13 or 14, and I would be the type of kid who would be reading in bed, and my bedtime was 9:30, and it'd be 11 o'clock. I'd be like, "Where'd that time go, man?"
Yeah.
And so I was just really into reading. Actually, all the way back in first grade, I remember I was reading a Snoopy book. The Charles Schulz Snoopy cartoons. And the recess bell went off, and I was still sitting there 5 minutes later. I didn't even know the recess bell went off, and all the other kids were gone. And I was so engrossed in the book that was probably the first book that I fell in love with.
Okay, that's really cool. So you've just been a reader pretty much as long as you can remember.
Yeah.
So before we get in,
say something.
Before we get into the new stuff, I want to kind of understand the old stuff. And so, what is the formula for the perfect day?
Yeah. So years before I wrote that book, I got introduced to Stoic philosophy. So Stoicism has been made really popular by Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
And I didn't read the classics. I read not reviews of it, but summaries of it. And I found this book by a woman named Sharon LaBelle, who wrote The Art of Living, which is a translation of Epictetus's teachings. And it's a really great little book. I've bought hundreds of copies for friends and for people that I've mentored over the years. And it kind of has one lesson per page, and it's really great. And I learned in it that you can't really control anything outside of you. You can only control what's inside of you. So I developed something called the 3C formula: control what you can, cope with what you can't control, and concentrate on what counts. And that will really drive you. And then I realized you can apply that to the day. You can generally control your morning more than you can any other time of the day.
Yeah.
You have to cope with what you can't control in the afternoon. The kids get sick at school, man, you got to go get them. And then you do all of that. You do hardcore discipline and structure and routine during the day so that you are free at night to concentrate on what counts. That's generally how it is for most people.
I like that.
And that made it into the book. I'm a big believer that you should get up and go to work on your most important thing as early as possible. As the old Mark Twain quote goes, if your job is to eat a frog, best thing to do is eat that frog first thing in the morning. If your job is to eat 2 frogs, best thing to do is eat the biggest frog first. And what that means is if you got hard work to do, you pushing it off to 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon means it's going to be pushed off to the next day. But if you attack it in the morning, you generally have the greatest discipline, willpower, and intention. And that's how you should structure your day. So it's interesting. It came out right around the time Extreme Ownership came out by Jocko Willink.
Okay.
And I swear I had never read Jocko, never heard of him. And Jocko has discipline equals freedom as his tagline. And in my book, I had this tagline that said structure equals freedom. So it's like two guys, same thought, same time. His was more popular and got picked up more, but it's the same sort of thing. It's structure your day so you're free at night.
Yeah, I love that. That's funny because so in my book, it's kind of similar to like an Atomic Habits.
Yep.
And I didn't read Atomic Habits until my book was out, and then I read it, and I was like, oh, or even like Dan Sullivan's Gap in the Gain. It's like we're saying the same thing a different way, but it's fun. Obviously, I haven't reached the Dan Sullivan and Atomic Habits
Nobody's
level.
reached the Atomic Habits level.
Yeah.
Man. That's insane. It's like #1 on Amazon 10 years later.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But it's really interesting how you have that epiphany of like, oh, wow, yeah, like we're really saying this. And I think that's what's so interesting about writing books is that, most things have been discovered. I mean, Stoicism has been around since the beginning of time, but then it's about how you rephrase it, and maybe the 3 C's connects with someone, and therefore they're able to make a difference in their life because of the way that you phrased it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just like that lady rephrased a lot of Epictetus' stuff, and it hit me.
And then so your Wall Street Journal best-selling book was Unstoppable. So what's Unstoppable about?
Yeah. So in 2006, when my business was taking off, I suffered from severe anxiety attacks, and they were self-inflicted. So nobody cried for me. I was originally in the fitness industry, and so I was a personal trainer and online fitness expert during the week, and then on Saturday afternoons to Sunday, I would binge drink. And because I was raised in Canada where you play hockey and binge drink all the time, and it's kind of normal, and it just was a part of my life for way too long. So I was hypocritical in my life. I knew what I should do, and I was doing the opposite, and it kind of welled up in me. In addition to the fact that I'm very introverted by nature, so I didn't use journaling, I didn't do meditation, and all those things that would help me. And so I kept all these things in my head, and eventually the attic got too cluttered up with stuff, and it resulted in these anxiety attacks where I actually went to the emergency room a couple of times. And I can laugh about it now because anxiety is in the distant past for me. But, I went to the emergency room on New Year's Day of 2006, and I walked in and I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I can tell you this, that if you ever go to an emergency room and it's really busy and you want to get served right away, just walk up and tell them you're having a heart attack, because they take you right to the back, right? You get to skip the line. And so that was my first one. I had another one a couple months later, and then I realized I need to do something about it. So the Unstoppable book is about, and a lot of my books are about stepping back and figuring out a vision for your life, a North Star, what really matters to you, and then just the tools that I use to overcome anxiety. Because, I was also in the best shape of my life when I had my anxiety attacks. I was in the fitness industry, 6-pack abs, 190 pounds, 9% body fat, but anxiety doesn't care if you have abs or not, and it can attack you anytime. And so we talk about that, but we also talk a lot about the journaling and meditation, talk therapy, that type of stuff that just gets the junk out of your head so you can process it. So that was the second book, but also like how you can use all this. Well, it was written for an entrepreneur.
That's interesting. It's great to share that story because I think, social media makes it so easy that they could have just seen you with your 6-pack and your 9% body fat and been like, man, Craig's got it all figured out, but you never know the whole story. And so, people can sit with envy or intrigue, but it's like you never know what someone else's journey is,
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think allowed that book to make the Wall Street Journal's best-selling list?
I think it's just that, unfortunately, for most people, but fortunately for me, is that anxiety is just on the rise. And,
sure.
In young folks, it's because of this thing, I believe, is a huge contributor.
For sure.
Because I really, I don't have much respect for anxiety. And I know that sounds kind of weird, or maybe even sounds kind of horrible and rude, but anxiety is often self-inflicted, and that there is a bunch of keystone habits and life changes that you can make to get rid of it. I don't talk about depression the same way because I've never had it. And I think that it's a lot more serious, but anxiety, it's just where you're like worried about other people, and you're worried about other things, and you're worried about the future, and you're just worried too much. And all of that can be corrected, and make sure that your behavior is in alignment with how you want to be. And when it's not, that's when you get those feelings. So it was written at a time where it was kind of like, kind of hit the zeitgeist of the universe, and, got picked up by the right people that got me up there.
That's so interesting. I feel very similar to you in regards to anxiety, because I feel like it's, that and like stress oftentimes are self-inflicted, and so I feel like if your life isn't the way you want it to be, you're in control of it. So you just have to make those changes. Doesn't mean it's easy, but you've got to change the things that are creating those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that because we actually don't have any real problems. A lot of us don't have real problems. We have air conditioning, we have food to eat. We invent these problems, and it breaks my heart when I see somebody constantly inventing problems and stressing themselves out that they can't free their mind up to do what they were put here to do.
I can't remember what book it was I was reading last month, and he said something along the lines of, you can do so much more, because at the end of the day, most of us all have a family whose couch we can sleep on. So we're never going to be homeless. So how bigger problems do you really have? In fact, I was golfing with a friend of mine yesterday, incredibly successful, high income earner. And he was saying, oh my gosh, I'm just so stressed, I'm going to need a therapist. And I said, isn't it interesting that all of that stress is self-inflicted? Because, you're making over $1 million a year, and you don't have to do that. You could cut your work in half and make $500,000 a year, have half the amount of stress, and still have an unbelievably great life. But you just want more. So you're in pursuit of more, and you're willing to put yourself through this stress in that pursuit. And the question is why? What is it that you're ultimately after that makes this mental anguish that you're going through worth whatever it is you're chasing?
Great question. And, there's two ways to deal with that. There's one way, which is, to cut back. The other way is just to reframe it in that, these things that are stressing me out are challenges, they're puzzles, they're not problems. And, just go about it as like everything's a game sort of approach. And, but yeah, a lot of people do put themselves through a lot of mental anguish that isn't necessarily needed.
I'm reading one of Dan Sullivan's new books now. It's called, Who Not How. Have you ever read that?
Yeah. I've read Ben and Dan's book. It's a good one.
And I thought that was interesting too, because it was talking about like procrastinations and why you can't get things done, and oftentimes because we just don't have the answers. So find someone who does have the answers, and then that'll help you get to where you want to go.
Totally.
Okay, well then let's get into the Dark Side of Discipline. So this came out just 2 weeks ago, and I just want to read the very top part, the very first piece of the back of the book, because I thought this was really interesting. It says, discipline is not cold plunging, joining the 5 a.m. club, exercising twice a day, reading one book every week, or living with a Navy SEAL. True discipline requires you to put a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem and say no to everything else. And that already, I think, like, boom, kind of grabs you a little bit. So why don't you give us the Reader's Digest of like, what can you expect in the Dark Side of Discipline?
Yeah. So, first of all, we talk a lot about that definition of discipline, which is the level 10 effort into your level 10 problem. And everything else is generally entertainment and what we call a perverse form of procrastination. Because oftentimes, the cold plunging, the 5 a.m. club, the reading a book a week, these are good things. But these good things are getting in the way of the great. And what I mean by that is, I know a lot of people, because I've written books, a lot of people will tell me that I want to write a book too. And I will see them 6 months later, a year later, and I'll go, how's the book going? Oh, I don't have time for it. And the truth is they do have time for it, but they're stacking so many other things on their to-do list. Like, I got to work out twice a week. I got to read the book a week. I'm not going to write a book, but I got to read the book a week, and these are good things. And it's interesting because like these people are not sitting at home with, 19 episodes of Netflix and a bag of potato chips and a 6-pack of beer. They're spending their time on what are actually good things, but the good things are destroying the great. And so that's on a lower level. But also what I've seen, multiple friends have had this happen to them where they didn't just destroy like some nice dreams that they had. They destroyed their families because they went down this discipline rabbit hole of trying to impress people on the internet with challenges and doing these things that their wives actually walked out on them with the kids. And now they're the kind of dad who gets to see their kids every couple of weeks. I'm like, For what? Because somebody on the internet said you weren't disciplined because you didn't do their challenge. Like, oh man, it breaks my heart. And after seeing this a few times, I was like, I got to stand up. I got to shout this from the rooftops, and I got to write this book.
That's interesting because the dark side of discipline makes you think, and even like on the cover it says, stop chasing, suffer less, achieve more. And I was really excited for today's conversation because it's like, what does that look like and what do you mean? But I totally get what you're saying. Like even like a 75 hard, the twice a day workout, read 10 pages a day, drink your water. It's like, if you're doing that, if you're working a regular job, then all of that, basically 75 hard is taking that time from your family or those other commitments, right? Not to say it's not good, because it is, of course. Exercising and taking care of your body and taking care of your mind, all of those things are good, but everything that you do also has a cost associated with it as well.
Yeah. So in the book, there's this fine line in between where discipline serves you and where you are a servant to discipline. And I had to live the book in order to write the book. And what that means is, at first, discipline was my savior. When I was the binge drinker, when I had the anxiety attacks, when I was letting my introverted tendencies be used as an excuse for not getting ahead in life. So discipline brought me up, and it was my savior in those points. But then there's a very fine line where you can take it too far and you cross over. And now all of a sudden you put yourself in the prison of your own making. And for me, I had an exercise streak of 1,000 days. And I talk about this in the book about, the lowest point on this exercise streak. I'm in Copenhagen airport because I went to Europe every summer, and you would fly from Toronto to Copenhagen and then Copenhagen on to your place. And I'd be like, man, I flew overnight. Now all of a sudden it's like 3:00 in the afternoon in Copenhagen. By the time I get to my place, I won't have time to work out. I worked out in the bathroom of an airport lounge. And after I did the workout, I looked at myself and I thought, what are you doing? Like, you're an idiot. Everybody listening to this goes, yeah, like, bro, like, just chill. But when you're in it, and when you're in, like, you have this streak and you cannot lose it, you just lose your mind and you lose the plot. And if you're, that's like kind of like a harmless example, but I see a lot of people, sacrificing important things to keep the streak alive, or to do something that they saw somebody on Instagram on their Explore page do, and then therefore they got to go and do it, but it doesn't serve them. And so the filter that I ask everybody to run their decisions through is this. Is this activity serving you? Like, is it making you better? Or are you serving it and it's actually a negative to your life? And if you are a servant to your habits in a way that it is robbing you of something better, then it's time to reevaluate and maybe say no thank you to the thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have two follow-up questions to that. So number one, you said you're like a binge drinker. Would you have considered yourself an alcoholic, or you just drank a lot?
I guess by medical definition at that point I was, because like I don't drink alcohol at all now. But at the time, it was one night per week, probably 12 drinks in a night. And I think, like, if you drink that much, you are medically defined as an alcoholic. But it was more of a frat boy lifestyle that just, went on for too long. And, so it's like, this is just what I did, with my friends.
The reason I ask is because I've seen people who do like the crazy thing that you just said, like the 1,000 days a week. Like I have another friend who did 75 hard, and he was like, 75 days is enough. I'm going to do 1,000. So he did 1,000 days of 75 hard. And now he's doing 100 days of 100 days in a row of a half marathon. But he was a drug addict at one time. So it's like that replaced.
That's where discipline is the savior.
Yeah, that was like his replacement of, I need this other thing. Otherwise I'll end up doing meth in an alley again,
Yeah, so I criticized 75 hard years ago, and Andy got upset with me, and I got a lot of feedback from both sides. So there were people who were like, yes, I didn't like it either, XYZ, ABC. And then there were the people who were adamant fans of it. And what I realized is that it's an amazing lifeline for somebody that's at a low point.
Yeah.
So if you are an alcoholic, if you are a drug addict, if you are severely overweight, it is the lifeline that gets you out of drowning.
Yeah.
But if you are already successful, if you already are fit, if you are already busy, if you are already making money, then and you add that on top of all the things that you're already doing that, your wife or husband already complains you don't have enough time for the family, and then you try and do that, then it becomes the net negative, and then that's where the dark side kicks in. So again, it's a very fine line of do the thing if it serves you, but if it's not serving you, be okay with leaving it.
Yeah, so that was my second point that I wanted to make. So I had started this podcast. This is episode 84. So like we're almost, a little close, getting close to 2 years of doing it.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I was like, I know it's going to take a long time for this to have any value. So like I'll commit to doing it for 4 years, because by the end of that 4 years, I'll know if like it's valuable or not, And I was doing an episode a week, and I did that for, I think, 78 episodes where I did, so 78 weeks in a row. I recorded an episode, put out an episode. And it started to feel like a job. And that's when I was like, man, I got to reevaluate this, because if I'm not looking forward to it and it doesn't energize me, then what am I doing? Like I did this because I wanted to do it. And now I feel at times going into an episode of like, ugh, I got to go do this. So I was like, I need
this deadline. Like, I'm just got to make something up here, because I got to get an episode for the team by 3:00 on Thursday.
So then I was like, man, I got to really reevaluate, like, why am I doing it? Because I don't think life's too short to do something just because I said I was going to do it, even though my intentions were good. And you could, even, quote unquote, say like I failed if I didn't pursue the 4 years. But it's like, I've got to make it work for me, because this isn't a job. It's right now it's a hobby, Right. So
it has to serve you.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like a hard thing to decide, because I enjoyed doing it, and we had some really great success on YouTube, getting our silver play button, and
nice.
And in fact, I had someone, because I said that at the end of like episode 78, like I'm going to reevaluate. I'm going to do one episode a month. They'll be a little bit longer. And I was at a barbecue with someone, and she goes, "Hey, when are those new episodes coming out?" I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, you said you're doing longer ones, and like, when does that start?" And I was like, "Oh shit." Like, you heard that, huh? I guess I should get going. But it's interesting, because I had to allow myself to be okay with that shift, because that's just what I needed to continue going forward.
Yeah, so a similar story. My wife, we have 3 kids, and we just had our third child in August of last year. And, she was really gung ho on doing a half marathon this year. And so she started training for it. She signed up for it. But, childbirth is pretty hard on a woman's body. And she realized, as we were getting closer to it, that if she keeps training, she's going to injure herself.
Yeah.
And then, she injures herself and she finishes the race, and then she's got to go and do recovery. And I thought it was wise of her, and it took a lot of courage and strength, because she told people she was doing this, for her to say, no, this is just not right for me. And that's the exact right thing to have done, but it's very difficult.
It is interesting.
So into it.
Because I believe, like, tell people you're going to do stuff, because then I feel like you're more likely to do it, right?
Yep.
And so that same friend of mine who did 75 for 1,000 days, well, I saw that he like ran 37 miles on his 37th birthday, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, I want to do that. That's exactly what you talked about, right? And I'm not even like a runner necessarily. I've ran one marathon, and I used to do a half marathon a year, and I hadn't done one since COVID, and I came up with this idea like in 2023 or 2024. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to totally do that. For my 38th birthday, I'm going to run 38 miles. And so I do a post on my 37th birthday saying, like, proclamating I'm going to do this. And I tell everyone I'm going to do it. And then people would be like, how's the kind of like what you said. They run into you and like, how's the training? And it's like, well, and so I'm doing it. And then as I was getting closer, I was like, shit, I really got to get going. And I was like strategizing, like, okay, if I start at midnight, then I could like run for so much, sleep for a bit, run for some more. And then I hurt my knee while I was training. And I was like, what am I doing? Right. Like, I'm not a long distance runner. I'm old. I'm way heavier than I used to be. Like, this, as cool as it would be, this isn't actually good for my health. And so I was embarrassed to end up not doing it, but it was the right decision for me that I had to make at the time.
Yeah, I have this little phrase: you got to make the right decision for your right life right now. And
yeah,
that's how you need to live life. And what most people will be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But what most people won't do is they won't step back and figure out what that right life is. for
Yeah.
them. They
Yeah.
won't figure out what they want to achieve in the future. And then therefore they are reactive. They'll open up the phone, see something on their Instagram Explore page. Oh, this is a trend of the week, or this is the new thing. I'm going to go do it. And what they should be focusing on doesn't get the attention it deserves.
I think that's so important to define what it is you're actually after too, because I was just talking with my wife the other day as we were on our walk, and life is so different now than it was a decade ago. And I've created opportunities for freedom within my life. And she was like, your definition of success is so different today than it was 10 years ago. And it's like, you're so right, because now success is being able to take this walk with you, or take the kids to school and pick the kids up from school. And it's so different, but you have to determine what it is that you want. Otherwise you can find yourself in pursuit of something that you don't even actually care about. You just started and never asked yourself, why am I doing it?
Right. And that's why you end up making $1 million and you're stressed out on a golf course on a Wednesday afternoon.
Right. Exactly. So you talked about, that you're doing good things and it's stopping you from great things. And like on the cover, it says, stop chasing, suffer less, and achieve more. So how is it that you, through changing the way that you think about discipline, actually achieve more, or that you stop doing good things and you allow yourself to do great things? Where is that taking place? What's the catalyst for that?
Well, if somebody really wants to get ahead in life, they can't be distracted and putting a half-hearted effort into a bunch of things, because
Sure.
it's never going to lead to huge breakthroughs. It's not going to lead to, the silver play button. It's not going to lead to $1 million income. It's not going to lead to a life of freedom. You have to say no to a lot of things in order to have that focus that allows you to do a much better effort on the things that matter. And so I see this all the time in talking to other entrepreneurs. They, probably one of the biggest mistakes that they make and weaknesses that they have, I mentioned this in the book, is that people do not say no enough. And, it's just, let's add another thing. Somebody wants me to do this. Yeah, sure, I can do that. You want me to come to that event? Yeah, I'll come to that event. And the next thing you know, we've diffused these efforts so much and our energy, and nobody's getting the attention. Nobody and no project is getting the attention that it deserves, that therefore we never have that breakthrough. And we're always kind of stuck, and we're spinning our wheels, and we're struggling, and we're wondering, like, man, for the amount that I'm working and how busy I am, I feel like I should be further ahead. And if we can chop away at the stuff that is the fluff and doesn't matter, and get you on working on the things that's in your, zone of genius, unique ability, whatever term you want to use, that really will move you ahead. Now, all of a sudden, you can cut back on those work hours. You can have more freedom in your life, and you'll actually get further ahead by doing less.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's certainly true. It's funny. I was just talking to one of our associates today, and she's got a new role, and the commitment was that she was going to give this particular company 32 hours of effort a week. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to her about it. She's like, well, I did 12 hours on Monday and 14 hours on Tuesday. And I said, that's a you problem, though, because you say yes. And you are the type that you'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. And if you don't believe you can do it in 32 hours, you're going to just work more to do it. But the problem is that's not how they've agreed to compensate you. So you need to be willing to say no, or to ask for more compensation. But you can't just do so much more effort than what they've committed to paying you for.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, the lack of boundaries in so many ways, lack of boundaries around time, the lack of boundaries around saying yes to things, the lack of boundaries on where we give our energy. Again, it steals, we're giving energy to good things, but who's suffering when we don't have boundaries? Well, we're suffering because, maybe our health suffers, our family suffers, our sleep suffers, because there's that lack of boundaries. Because, man, you could stay awake 48 hours a day and still not get everything done these days.
It's amazing, because that's one of those like learning lessons over time of like I always thought it was so important in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey to always be available. Mm-hmm. And I wore it like a badge of honor, like Craig, call me at 9 o'clock and I'll answer, Now, if you call me at 9, I'm for sure not answering. and eventually you'll learn, oh, Cody doesn't answer if it's not during the day, and so you don't expect me to answer, because it'll be, and if you ask me like, hey, I called you at 9, what happened? I'd say, oh, I was with the family. Like if it's an emergency, text me, but otherwise like call me during the day or set up a meeting, Well,
I just communicate very clearly to people that there are no emergencies in my business.
Oh, I like that.
If it's an emergency and somebody's bleeding, you don't need to call, like, I'm not going to be able to help you. You need to call an ambulance. And so
That's good. I like that.
there are no emergencies.
I like that.
Have you ever read a Dan Kennedy book, The Marketing Guy?
No.
Okay, so Dan Kennedy's this grumpy old marketer who's been very influential and to people like Russell Brunson and stuff like that. And Dan Kennedy, he to this day has never had a cell phone, never had an email address. He doesn't even connect his computer to the internet. His wife does any of that stuff, and he makes a big deal about this. And he's controlling the narrative because now he's controlling how people expect to communicate with him. And I learned that early in my career, and I made a big deal about how I don't answer email. And therefore, even to this day, I don't get a lot of email.
Yeah.
I will actually answer it if people send me an email, but I made a big deal about how, I'm very protective of my time and I hardly ever answer email and I don't really check it and this, that, and the other thing. And therefore, people communicate through my assistant. It's just all like how I train people to
very
operate
interesting
with me.
It's so important to set those boundaries. And I was telling that same gal, because she's taking on like a consulting role now. And I told her, I said, you've got to be really clear with your boundaries because they'll keep pushing it, right? Like if they ask you to do something and you say yes, like they're going to do it. And I said, you have to think back to calls that we've been on where a client asked me to do something that's outside of our scope. And I remind them politely, oh, sorry, Craig, that's not something that we do. I can certainly help point you in the right direction, but that's not a part of our agreement.
That's exactly it. And it's figuring out how to communicate tactfully because a lot of people want to stand up and say that, but they don't know how. And so, words are easy to put together and script it in a way where you just like, hey, I wouldn't be offended by that. And it'd be like, oh yeah, man, he's right. And, but it's worth a shot. You never know.
I don't mind them asking because worst thing I can say is no. So it doesn't offend me that they asked. It's just, I'm not going to do it.
Right. Exactly. And the boundaries are key.
So I'm curious, as you're helping people, achieve these things as individuals, how do you believe it's the best way to determine what matters? Like if you're just in the void, how do you determine like, oh, this 75 hard isn't right for me, or like this thing isn't right for me? How does one go about finding what the things that matter to them are?
Yeah. So the most important thing that people can do, and I've practiced this for years and years now, because when I first was introduced to the concept of creating a vision for your life, which is the most important thing to do. When the first time I did it, like it came true almost to the date, almost to the exact goal.
Yeah.
It was a magical experience. So in 2006, I'll just go a quick story. 2006, I hired my first business coach. And the very first question on the very first call, he says to me, what do you want your business to look like in 5 years from now? And at the time I was just running a fitness business online. And I said, well, I want to run a business like Early to Rise. And Early to Rise is a very popular website, started in 2000 by this guy named Mark Ford. And he wrote a book called Ready, Fire, Aim, which was really popular with entrepreneurs. And it was just great. It had health, wealth, and success all in the newsletter. And, they sold courses and stuff. And my coach knew who that was. And he said, great, but you're going to have to become a better writer, better speaker, grow your network, become a better leader, all these things. And so I started doing those things and getting connected with people. And sure enough, through a series of events, I met a guy who knew Mark Ford. And this guy, my friend, knew my goal was to own a business like Early to Rise. And he said, hey, I just talked to Mark Ford. He wants to sell the business. He's still interested in buying it. And I ended up buying it 5 years, 3 months, and 17 days after that first. Like, it's crazy.
That's amazing.
And so I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's something to this. And so I then created a business before COVID where I did these workshops and people would come in and we'd start the day with the vision. And by the end of the day, they'd walk out with a 90-day plan of exactly what to do for the next 90 days to hit like really big goals.
Yeah.
But it all started with like, I got to figure out where you want to be in 3 to 5 years from now, because then I can run every opportunity and decision through a filter of, does this move you forward on the straight line to success to your North Star, which is your vision, or is it a dangerous detour? And we can say yes or no to every opportunity that comes into our life based on this one decision. So that's the thing that we take people through, and we talk about it in the book, and we have exercises and videos that people can download as free bonuses. And I'm just so focused and fascinated with the vision process because not only have I experienced amazing results from it, but many of the people who have come through my world and read my books, they say, yep, achieved what I wanted to, sometimes sooner, sometimes a little bit later, but exactly, according to the plan. And that's the powerful thing. And once you get that out of your head, you step back and you do a bit of thinking, which is the hardest thing to do. You get that out of your head. Now you have the roadmap for success.
It's so amazing how articulating and just determining what you want. So for me, I believe in the universe, and I believe it's the universe that then provides those opportunities. As long as you're clear about what you want and you're willing to do the work that it takes to get the thing that you want, the universe will give you a path. It's like a river, and it's just going to take the path of least resistance. And you've got to be present enough to see when there's a sign like, hey, you can meet this Ford guy. And if you're like, I don't know if I'm ready to meet him, I don't think so, then the universe like, oh, okay, Craig doesn't actually want a business like Ford, because if he did, he'd say yes. And so I think it's so important to be present and to see the signs of the universe and to be vocal or put it on paper, but let the universe know what it is that you're after. And there's a great story. I think this was around like 2019-ish. And I wish I could remember the book, but I just don't. But we're reading a book as a company, and in that book, it was talking about like how you have to want more for yourself. And I realized like, man, when I grew up, things were okay. My parents didn't really understand money. And so like all I really wanted as an adult was like to be safe, like to not have to worry about things, to be conservative and just know it was all okay. And so I was living in this 983 square foot house with my wife and 2 kids and 2 dogs. And my mortgage was $600 a month. And both of my cars were paid off. So I had literally I had nothing to worry about, like right. Worst case scenario, I could sell hot dogs in the Walmart parking lot and like we would be fine. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I have everything I wanted. And it's all good. But then I realized like, well, obviously I want other things, but I just don't want, I'm like, there's like that fear associated with like what more would look like. And so I said like, you know what? I always get what I want. So I just need to elevate my desires. And I did. And this was like rolling into COVID. So all my activities arguably got worse and like my daily habits and all of that. But now all of a sudden I got all of these things that I wanted. We got a new house and I got my dream car and all this stuff. And all that really shifted is I just opened my mind to the possibilities of like, no, actually, I can have more.
So let me ask you something is how does somebody identify the signs? So, they open their mind. How do they know when it's a sign and when it's just, something not to, pay attention to? I
think that for me, my belief is that you have to be present because sometimes the sign is as clear as like an email that is, this is the thing that you want. And so obviously it's just there. Sometimes it might be a billboard on the freeway. So if you're going through life and you're distracted and you're not in tune and you're not present, you may never even see the sign. You're not even aware that you missed it because you weren't present enough to see it. But then there's a phenomenon, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's, if you're going to buy a new red Honda Civic, then all of a sudden,
activating system.
Yes, then you see all the red Honda Civics.
Yeah.
So in life, we see and hear the things that we want to. So if you want something, you'll see the signs. As long as you're present and you're not distracted, because so much, you already held your phone up a couple times, but so much of our life is lived through here, and that's not where the sign's going to be. It's in real life happening currently to us. And so I'd say, when you're present, you'll find them. And the universe will, I believe, and you can change out the universe, whatever word you want, but
Sure.
They'll see the things that you're doing. So like, I believe, in fact, when I had my cell phone store, this is my first business, I was 19. And in the back, I had a TV. This is so long ago, it was a tube TV with the big back. And I had a PlayStation with video games. And my buddy came to the store. He said, dude, let's go play Madden. And I said, I can't. He's like, why? I said, I'm working. He goes, there's nobody in the store. I said, I know. But if I go back there, it's telling the universe that I don't really care if someone comes into the store. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be ready, because then the universe will see like I'm going to put in the work, and I know if I go play the video game, I know that in actuality, no one driving by knows if I'm like playing the video game or not. But I believe the sign I'm sending to the universe if I go play it is I'm not really serious about succeeding in my business today.
I love that story. I think I agree wholeheartedly with everything about it.
And so what I was getting to is I do workshops now. Do you know what Vistage is? Have you ever heard of Vistage?
I have heard of this.
So I'm a Vistage speaker. And so Vistage, for those of you listening who don't know what it is, it's the largest peer advisory group in the world. And so it's this incredible program. If you're part of a Vistage group, you have 12 meetings a year. And in 8 of those 12, they bring in a guest speaker. So I get about 3 hours to take the whatever Vistage group I'm with through a workshop for winning the moment. And we talk about the universe, and we talk about their whys, and we talk about their big, hairy, audacious goal. Because big, hairy, audacious goal for me is 3 to 5 years, and a why is like your bigger purpose. Sure. And it is shocking because these are all C-suite executives, all incredibly successful business people. And many times they don't have a why.
Right.
And it's just shocking because you would think from the outside looking in, well, how did you get here then? And I'll never forget this one gal who said, I'm kind of embarrassed, but I don't have a why. I just go to work every day. And I thought, damn, that is unfortunate. Because here you are, she's, been on this earth for 60 years, and you're just doing it because that's just what you thought you should do. And she never took time to decide for herself, like, what do I truly want out of this life?
Right. And so, people are successful by sheer force of nature. But this is where, sheer force of nature, when you don't have a big why and you're reactive to the stuff on here, is the distraction that brings the dark side of discipline.
Yeah.
If you have the big why, now you have this rooted foundation.
Yeah.
And there's method behind everything that you do that's leading you towards, I imagine you have the same kind of core value of freedom as I do.
Yeah.
Which is, everything that I've ever... even when I was a kid, I don't want to be bossed around by anybody. I've always said I wanted to make the world play by my rules. I don't want to play by the world's rules. So I do think, like, when people work, I'm not working. When people are not working, I work. And it's like kind of weird, but that's just the way that I like it. And it's so fascinating to me that people haven't done that. But I believe that most people are reactive by nature. And they, she's obviously was reactive in a good way, and has tremendous energy and put energy towards, being a worker bee sort of thing, and has gotten very far in life. But it is interesting to think, like, what else could she have done if she had, you just have to step back and do the work that you teach. And when you do that, you can have some great clarity in it. And it's almost like taking a race car with its wheels spinning in the mud 6 inches from the asphalt, and your work and my work comes and picks that race car up and puts it on the asphalt. Now it's going 200 miles an hour. It's just high performance, on steroids, and getting people even better success.
Well, and that's what I feel like is so fascinating about it, is that I feel like with life, we are ultimately, and you kind of talked about it with your first book, with your 3 C's. But I think the difference between people who are living the life they want and people who feel stuck is the people who take control and responsibility for their life. I tell my kids, I say, the best lesson I have for you is everything good, bad in your life is a reflection of you. And the second that you own it, if you're having a bad day, own it. If you're having a good day, own it. And the faster you can do that, the better your life is going to be, because so many people are looking to say, like, oh, this client sucks, or my boss sucks, or this location's no good. And they're always looking for this outside force that's creating the obstacle in their life. But the problem is you can't control that. So you can't do anything about it. And when I was in sales, that's where I spent, that's where my 10,000 hours is.
Yeah.
And the guys who didn't succeed in sales always said the same shit. And it was like, it's slow. People aren't buying today. And I used to ask them when we were in Costco. So it was like, when they would say that, I'd make them go, because Costco counts when people walk in the door. So I'd say, do me a favor and go get the door count for me for the last 30 minutes. And they'd come back. They'd be like, it was 784 people. I said, wow, 784 people. How many people does it take to sell a cell phone? They're like, it takes 1. I was like, so that's obviously not the problem. But the thing is, if you're saying it's slow, what you've said is, I'm perfect. I've greeted all 784 people with great energy. I got great sleep last night. I did my morning routine. My hair is sharp. My pants are pressed. My shirt's tucked in. Like, everything about what I'm doing is flawless. The problem is these 784 people. And I said, if that's the case, I actually have no value for you. However, if your energy is off, or you're not saying hello, or you're having a bad day, we can have a dialogue about that, and perhaps we can solve it.
Yeah.
But that's only if you can take responsibility for why you haven't sold anything in the last hour.
Yeah, it's very similar. A client emailed me today. He sells coaching in England, and he goes, it's been rough the last couple of weeks. The economy here in England is I think it's hurting, and it's hurting my sales. And so I was like, all right, let me Google how many people live in England. 57 million. There's 57 million people in England. Do you think that all of them are broke? And it turned them around, but that's exactly it, man. It's so I don't pay attention to the news much because to me, I can't control these people. I can't control what he's doing about this, that, or the other thing
Yeah.
today, and so therefore, it's a waste of my energy to get caught up in these conversations. A lot of our family members are, because we live in Canada, like, oh, I'm not going to the States anymore.
Yeah.
And they end up going to the States anyways. But, and I'm just like, well, I can't do anything about it. And so, like, if all the rules or changes impact me directly, I'll know about it and I'll respond to it then.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm going to continue business as usual. I'm going to run my ads. We're going to, train our sales team. We're going to send the emails out, and because that's what I control. And I think it's there really is two types of people: the people that take that self control, and you never have to worry about them. Like you said, you could end up selling hot dogs in Costco parking lot. That's the attitude. And then there's the other people that even when things are good, there's always something wrong, and it's not their fault.
Well, and so we talked about you mentioned what the thing was when you buy a red Honda Civic and you see it. So same company. This kid, his name was Tyler Bennett. Tyler, if you're listening, you're probably not, but shout out to you. And he's late all the time. He's always late. So I go meet with him one day and say, Tyler, what's the problem, dude? He goes, oh, Cody, it's just like I get all the red lights. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, I just get every red light, and that's why I'm late. I said, okay. I said, I got an idea. He goes, what's that? I said, do me a favor and tell yourself you're going to get all the green lights. And he said, that's stupid. I said, it might be, but will you say it and will you believe it? Tomorrow on the way to work, you're going to get all the green lights. He goes, yes, I'll do that. I said, okay, great. Shows up to work the next day. He's like 2 minutes early. I call him. I say, as soon as he clocks in, I call him. Tyler, what's up, dude? How'd you make it on time? He goes, Cody, you're never going to believe it. Seriously, every light was green on the way into work. And I said, that's amazing, Tyler. Here's the thing. It was probably the exact same as every day. You just choose to focus on something different. Like, life is what you make it. And so if you have a choice between being upset or being happy, why not choose being happy? And to me, that is green lights and red lights. Like, you get to decide.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in the self-talk too. And so if somebody says I'm always late, or I always get red lights, it's really more about I'm always late. Well, you're never going to be on time. But if you start shifting that, we talk about this in the book, is we want to build systems so that we make the right actions automatic. And when you have the right actions automatic and you start to see changes in your behavior, then you can see changes in your identity. And the next thing you know, you go from a person who's like, I'm always late, to I'm always on time, I'm always early. And it's just, that belief in yourself. And then that's just how you start living, and you raise your standards for life. And the next thing you know, your results come a lot better. Well,
and for the listeners too, Craig said something important. And that is also that we want to be, as a human species, right. All of us, no matter what we believe, we want to be vindicated in that belief. It's the same about how we talk about ourselves. So if you say I'm always late, you'll remember and find reasons to validate what you believe. And the times you're early, you just won't even remember because that doesn't support your cause, right? And so you have to really be careful with the words and the thoughts that you have, because those will become your reality. And it seems too simple, right? For Tyler, it was too simple of a fix to say, believe you're going to get green lights. And so we don't want to believe it because that seems just too easy. And it's kind of like anxiety, where we were talking earlier that you get to fix that yourself, but that seems too easy. We think like we need a doctor, we need a diagnosis, and we need drugs, but it's like, no, you don't. Just start changing your thoughts and your behaviors, and eventually you'll be where you want to be.
Yeah, for a long time, I labeled myself as an introvert, and that really did not serve me in life. I would use all the introverted excuses.
Yeah.
I couldn't, I can't go to an event. I can't go to these group things, and it put me in a prison of my own design. And then over time, I just decided I don't want to be that anymore. So everything's a learnable skill, in my opinion.
Yep.
And being high energy and greeting people and all these things, some of it was difficult for me to learn and to make habitual. But over time, I was able to do it. And, I greet everybody who comes into the elevator. I don't look at my phone. I hug people at events, even though it's not natural to me. But over time, it becomes easier and easier. And I definitely stopped using the language of I'm introverted. Now I say I have some introverted tendencies, but I don't label myself, because if I label myself, then that becomes the reality.
What's funny is I had a business and speaking coach who was talking about the importance of names, because I watched him speak, and so I went up to him. I was like, this guy is amazing. His name's Michael Alasso. That's how I got into Vistage, and he was so great. And what stood out to me is like he remembered everyone's names, and he would then like go back, like, Greg, you had said earlier, and so then it's like you're like, oh man, he remembered what I said. And so I was talking to him about it, and we're going through it, and he was giving me that skill, and I said, I just can't remember names. And so I was victim of my own advice, right? I'm already labeling that I can't do it, so of course I can't. And Michael's telling me, like, look, it's not easy in the beginning, but next time you have an opportunity, I want you to write down the names of the people somewhere, anywhere. So that way you have something to look at so you can practice using it. And so that next weekend, I ended up playing golf. I went out by myself and I played with 3 older gentlemen. So I wrote their names down on the scorecard. And every time it was, Craig, nice shot. Oh, Mallory, awesome putt. Oh, Blake, wait, great chip, and at the end of the round, they came up to me and they said, we just got to tell you, you're the most fun person we've ever played around with golf with. And we just enjoyed that round with you so much. And I really believe the difference was I connected with them and I used their names, and that's all that it took. And it was enough of an impact for them to come talk to me after the fact and say how much they appreciated playing with me from this one simple thing of writing down their names and using it.
That's fantastic, because I too have been victim of that. And I'd been at events in the past. I'm like, I can't believe I can't remember that person's name. They just gave it to me, man. But I will use that because it's something I need to improve on still.
And so you talked about like making it a part of your habit. So then he said, like, when they have a name tag, use it. If your waitress comes up, say, oh, Craig, thank you so much. Or if you're at Starbucks, wherever you are, if they have a visible name, get comfortable. And he would say to me, he'd say, Cody, we've been on this call for 45 minutes. You've not addressed me as Michael once. You never used my name back to me. How many times have I said Cody? And I was like, oh, every time pretty much. He's like, and it means something. He's like, so practice it, put it into practice. And that has been an unbelievably valuable skill. And I know that part of the reason that I get the good scores on Vistage when I'm done is because I am using their names and recalling them, and they feel like we had a real connection.
Yeah. And I think that, connection is one amazing leverage point in this day and age of everything being automated and
absolutely
AI and that sort of stuff. Because someone asked me recently, like, what are you excited about in business? And I said, live events. 'Cause we run 3 a year, and I'd like to start running more, because the connection that is made at them is, there's nothing yet. And maybe there will be, but there is nothing yet that rivals the connection that people can make in person, especially when it's over a couple of days.
Yeah, I just got back from a hospitality event called BITAC in San Diego. And hospitality is such a relationship-based business. And what's amazing is when I meet the people and I know them, I am infinitely if they sent me a cold email of like, I've got this great software, can we set up a demo? The answer is no, 100 out of 100 times. Yep. But then I meet them there and I start talking to them and they become a person. And then it's like, yes, Craig, let me see your demo. Let's see what you got. Let me see if I can help you. Or if I can't use it, maybe I know someone who can. And that human connection is unbelievably valuable.
Yeah, I think I've always said to people, like, if you want to make sure that you get a no, email somebody. If you're on the phone with them, you got a better chance.
Yeah.
If you're face to face with somebody, it's pretty hard for someone to say no to you.
Yeah.
Because they just don't want to be the bad guy. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the many reasons that face-to-face connection is so powerful.
So let's get back to the dark side of discipline. Who's the right reader for this? Like, so if you're listening to today's podcast and you're wondering if this book's for you, who do you think this book is for?
Yeah, this is definitely for those people that I call wild horses, the ambitious people who want to do it all, have it all, be it all, achieve it all. And if you feel like you are out there just, activity, but not enough accomplishment, this book is right for you because, first of all, it's a very short book, and I wrote it specifically to try and keep it to 25,000 words because I know how busy people are. So I wanted to hit them with the strong message early in chapter 1 about the definition of discipline, get their right focus, but then get them to step back, create that vision for their life. So now they have that straight line to success so that they can go and continue to put the energy and ambition into things. Because one of my friends said to me, dark side of discipline, is this going to take away my ambition? No, it's not. It's actually going to accelerate your ambition because you're going to get clarity and therefore you're going to be able to go faster. So if you feel like you're going fast right now, but not getting the results that you want, this book is for you.
That's awesome. And it grabs your attention. In fact, because I don't buy anything, like I've never ordered anything on Amazon. So a book came and my wife was like,
You've never ordered anything on Amazon?
Nope.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Nope. Never done it. And I don't really buy stuff ever. And so your book came in the mail and my wife's like, what the hell is this? Dark Side of Discipline? Like you went out and bought this? And because she's like, you don't even know how to buy anything. And I was like, no, Craig's going to be in my podcast. But it's interesting. And I love the way that you phrase the title. And I love the way that the book looks, and hearing you explain, I totally get it. Like that makes so much sense. I think people are in pursuit of so much that they achieve nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the compliments on the title and the book cover, because as an author, like it's like YouTube. It's like, YouTube success is based on title,
thumbnail.
video, and the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And that's what, book sales are now, because most books, a lot of people buy books based on the thumbnail they see on Amazon. So I worked with a guy named Kerry Oberbrunner, and he was absolutely amazing. This is my 4th book, and I realized that it's so many things wrong in the past. And that's why I have the highest hopes for this one.
Is this self-published or do you have a publisher?
It is self-published.
Okay.
But, it's, Kerry's company is a hybrid company. It's called Igniting Souls is his company. And then Ethos Collective is the publishing arm of it. And,
okay.
But they know Amazon inside and out.
That's the key.
Amazon is unbelievable at the machine, the factory that they have for books is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what you can do, like on the print on demand stuff and things with books now. It's pretty wild.
It really
is that where you want the audience to buy it? Should I just put the Amazon link? Is that the best place?
Yeah, totally. And if they type in darksideofdiscipline.com right now, it'll redirect to Amazon. But in the future, we're going to have some extra bonuses and goodies there too.
Okay, that's great. So I will put that link for the listeners in the show notes so you can get right there. If you like it and you read it, this is me asking, not Craig, please leave a review, because it means such a huge deal to Amazon and our rankings and our ability to sell more books. So please do that. And if you don't like it, just don't tell anybody. don't put it on Amazon. If you don't
like it, tell me why.
Yeah,
Hit
exactly.
me up on Instagram and tell me why, because I'd love to know, because I actually thought I'd get a lot more negative feedback on this book than I have so far.
That's great. Well, there you go. Look, you got a direct line to Craig. If you don't like it, tell him. If you love it, tell Amazon and tell Craig. So with that, Craig, I got 3 more questions for you.
Yeah,
the very first question is, what's the biggest win you've ever had in your life?
Oh, meeting my wife, for sure. By hands down.
How long have you been married?
Only since 2021.
Okay, so you're 3 years in.
Yeah, 3 years, soon 4, and we had 3 kids in 3 years.
Oh my goodness. Were you married before, or is that your first marriage?
No, I'm an old late bloomer.
Wow, so she must have been special.
She is.
That's very cool. Okay, and then what's your biggest loss?
My biggest regret was not having any videos of my father before he passed away in 2008. Now, 2008, we had those ugly flip cams.
Yeah.
But, I tell this to everybody. If your parents are still alive, your grandparents are still alive, and you haven't sat down and done a little interview with them where you ask them about their advice and their life story, do it. I got a 10-minute or 15-minute video of my mom on YouTube, and just me. And I found out stuff I never knew.
Yeah.
By doing this little interview. So do that.
That's funny you say that. I had my dad on my podcast. I think he was guest number 3. And my dad and I are very close. He was the best man at my wedding, but he told me stuff during the podcast I'd never heard before. I know. I found out he was a bookie in college, and I never knew that.
It's crazy.
And so that was pretty interesting, but I love that. In fact, there's a journal out right now that I've seen on Instagram that you get for your dad, and then I
have seen that ad too.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Okay, that's great. And then the last question, which I'm really curious to hear your answer, how do you define success?
Well, I define success as knowing what you want, sticking to it, and saying no to all the stuff that takes you off on a detour.
Wow, what a quick, I don't think ever fired back the answer so fast. That's great. Well, Craig, anything you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, last thing is I'll just say, at the end of your life, you're going to look back and it's going to be all about the people you spent your time with and the experiences you had. Money and stuff are great, but do not neglect the people and experiences, because that's all you're going to remember.
Oh, I love that. What a great way to end the podcast. Craig, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. All the listeners, jump on those show notes, go pick up the book. It's only like 121 pages, easy to knock out. If you're doing 75 hard, that's only 12 days and you'll have the book done. Craig, thank you again so much for being with us. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.